Hello everyone. In this second tutorial, I'm going to lead you through the process of creating a frequency table and histograms using Excel. And then at the end of the presentation, I'm going to talk about formatting APA tables and figures. Be sure to stay tuned through the end because your assignment will require you to use APA formatting for your tables and figures. All right, here we go. So what I'm going to demonstrate in Excel is I'm going to show you how to sort data and then construct frequency tables. One from a categorical variable and another from an equal interval variable. And then we're going to create a histogram from a frequency table. And once again, histograms are only applicable to bins from an equal interval variable. So we don't use histograms for categorical variables or ordinal variables. So without further ado, let's get to the data. All right, these data might look very familiar. They were from one of the earlier presentations. So as a reminder, we have subject ID, which we're actually not going to use as we're making a frequency table, but I just left it here. We have gender and we have test scores. So we had a couple different things that we were looking at. And so the first thing that I'm going to do is to create a frequency table for the categorical variable of gender. In order to do that, I'm going to copy the row and I'm going to create a different sheet so that we have it all nice and tidy. This is just a reminder also that I do have a practice sheet uploaded on Blackboard for this tutorial. So you might want to go and grab that practice sheet, download it so that you can practice along with me. So if you want to do that, put me on pause. I will wait for you and then come back and we can work on this together. Okay, so for now we have gender, and if you will recall, we had 30 subjects. It says 31, that's just because it starts at number 2. And we had 2, I forget which was which, male or female, so we'll just make it up for this purpose. We'll call females 1 and males 2. If you will recall, what is needed in a frequency table is going to be, number 1, we're going to need the variable title. So that would be gender. I'm going to put that down. And we need the frequency. And finally, we need the percentage. All right. And we had females. And we're going to call them in this table 1. I'm just going to widen this out just a tad. Okay. And then we have males. And we'll call that 2. So we have the basics of the table right now set up. Excuse me, why be compulsive here? There we go. All right. And next thing we need to do is we're going to start by filling in the frequency. So in order to do that, the easiest thing to do is to sort this row. And we sorted in a previous video, so let's try this again. I'm going to highlight the whole row. I'm going to go to Data, and I'm going to go to Sort. And I'm going to notice here that my data has headers, which it does. It has the gender header. And I am going to sort small. I'll go smallest to largest. It actually really doesn't matter in this case. Okay. All right. So now I can just very easily count up how many 1s I have and how many 2s I have. There's another way of doing it if you're interested, if you're just looking for all sorts of technological magic. You can put an equal sign. You can click on the word count, or you can search for the formula for count. You select the cells that you want to count, and it tells me that there are 13 cells that have a code of 1. So I'm going to put 13 here. And then just because I like to be extra careful, I'm going to do the same for the 2s, just to make sure that we are, I haven't missed anything somehow. Yep, and we have 17 males. Very good. So we have our frequency, and now what we're going to do is we're going to find the percentage. Well, we know that our total is going to be 30. 13 plus 17 is 30. Excel can help us to do the calculation. Equals, I'm going to take the frequency, and I'm going to divide it by 30, the total n, and that gives us this crazy number. I'm going to format that back in just a moment, but I'll do the same with here. Equals 17 divided by 30. There you go. All right, I like to get these to 2 decimal points, so I'm going to format the cells. I'm going to click on number, and often it'll come up at 2. There we go. All right, now these actually don't look like percentages, do they? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert these to a percentage by right-clicking, formatting the cell, and this time I'm going to click down to percentage. And I don't want 2 decimal points anymore, I think. Let's see how that works. Yes. Okay, so now we have the percentages, and we have the basics of a categorical or a frequency table for a categorical variable. So we're all good. And then to make it APA, you're going to add some total columns perhaps, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how you can so easily cut and paste this. So I'm going to highlight the cells, I'm going to hit copy, and then I'm going to open a Word document and I'm going to paste. Now if I just do a regular paste, well this regular paste seemed to work out okay, although I might need to change the rows a little bit there. Sometimes you can paste it and it'll look different, so if I choose another option for paste, I can paste it and it looks like what it did. As you can see, there's some differences. You can paste it as a picture, or it can paste just as words. We don't want that at all. We want to be able to have this table. And from there, you can edit the way you want the table to look, right? Make sense? Okay, so that's our first frequency table. And now we're going to do a frequency table for the test score. So I'm going to copy this column, make a new sheet. There it is. And one of the reasons why I'm taking the time to make a frequency table for this test score is because it's the first step towards making a histogram. And so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to sort these scores from lowest to highest. I think that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to sort my data. Oh, did I select the header? I'm not sure if I did. Let's try that again. Okay, so I'm going to just select everything including the header, and I'm going to sort my data. My data has a header right there, test score, smallest to largest. Okay, and so now I have all of my scores here, but this is not as simple as a categorical variable because I have to take all of these scores and somehow put them in bins like we talked about before. We need to have some grouped some grouped bins for us to put these scores in. And I think we talked about in the previous video that the scores ranged from 0 to 100, so it made a lot of sense to make 10 bins. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to put you on pause because I don't think you want to wait through all of this, and I will create those bins right now. And with the magic of editing, I am back, and now I have the data that we need to complete the frequency table for this grouped frequency. So we have the scores 0 to 10, 11 to 20, all the way down to 91 to 100. We have the frequency for each and the percent that each one occupies in the total distribution. And so we are on our way. So there you go. So that part was pretty easy, and once again you would do the same thing. If you wanted to cut and paste this, you would copy this and just simply paste it in a Word document and then edit from there. And again, we're going to talk about APA formatting in just a moment. So what we're going to do with this data that we have in a frequency table is we're going to make a histogram. So this is very simple to do. What we're going to do is we're going to highlight the scores and the frequencies. That's all we're going to highlight. We're not going to highlight the labels at all, but just the scores and the frequencies. And then we're going to come up to the Insert button up here. And as you can see, there are lots of different charts that you could play with. And actually, Excel has different ways of making a histogram. I'm going to show you one way that is just a little bit, I think it's the easiest way, but it's a little bit funky in that you have to take a couple steps to make the histogram. But here we go. We're going to select the column or bar chart, even though we're not doing a bar graph. I'm going to select that. So when I did that, you can see that it automatically created bars that represent the data in this table. So we're in good shape. But this is not a histogram, it's a bar graph because there's space in between the different bins. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the actual bars, and I'm going to right click to format the data series. So you will want to do this too. And then we have a couple of different things up here that will give us some options. This has to do with the fill and the border, and this has to do with some other visual things. But then over here, this one has to do with the bars themselves. And so I'm going to go down here where it says gap width, and it looks like between the different bins, we have a gap width of 219%. So I am going to just make that 0. So let's see what happens when I do that. Oh, there you go. The histogram is now complete, and those bars are touching, and that shows the continuous nature of this data. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give the chart a title, and I'm not going to be creative in the slightest. I'm just going to call it test scores. All right, and the beauty of the histogram again is that it shows you a visual representation of the data. And when I look at these data right here, I'm happening to notice that there is one peak, but there's also another semi-peak. So we might almost say that this is bimodal. It's definitely an odd distribution, as I discussed earlier, but a histogram will let you know sort of the visual layout of the data. And so at the bottom we have the bins, and on the x-axis, let me be clear, and on the y-axis we have the frequency for each particular bin. So the most frequent bin is 31 to 40 with a frequency of 6. So what we're going to do now, and what you'll want to do when you have your homework assignment, is to right-click and copy the graph, and you're going to go back to your Word document and you can paste it. There it is. And then once you're there, you can make it smaller or bigger, whatever you need to do. Of course, you know, it's interesting when you change the graph, you change sort of the shape of it. Yeah, this looks less dramatic when you pull it out, doesn't it? Like that. Anyway, I am getting off on a tangent. So there you go. That's how you're going to go ahead and put together a histogram. So the last thing I'm going to talk with you about in this hopefully brief presentation is, let me try to find it, there we go, back to our PowerPoint, is how to use APA style when you're formatting tables and figures. And so this is just a good resource for you, and this PowerPoint is pasted or posted above the video, so you can always download it and you have this reference for you. So when you're formatting a table in typical APA style, you're going to number your tables even if you only have one, and the word tables is capitalized. You're going to add a short but informative title. The suggestion is to make it in italic, but that is not required for APA style. If you make it in italic, it tends to stand out more, which is wonderful. You have horizontal lines for the top and the bottom of the table, and you'll notice that there are no vertical lines on the side or here, or borders of any kind. So basically we're using horizontal lines for the top and the bottom of the table, and that is it. Then when we get to the different labels in the table, we have just the labels themselves underlined. And so that might be different from what you've seen in the past. And you can put a note at the bottom underneath the table. And if you have an asterisk or a letter with a note, you can add that as well. What you need to remember to do is be consistent with font type and font size. So you want to make sure the size and type are uniform. You want to make sure your spacing between the lines is also consistent, and as you can see, this is all about one space with one spacing there. And if you have decimal places, make them consistent as well. So you wouldn't want to have 17.64 and 13.1 and then 51 here. You have it shown to the one decimal place here, so you want to keep that consistent. So this is, in short, what a APA style table looks like, and we do have a link here for you, so you can take a look at that. All right, so here's an example from one of my publications that just came out this last year. And this just goes to show that even though I've shown you a pretty clear description of what APA style is, the particular journal that you work with will make their own changes. They have their own sort of ways of doing things. And so in this, you have some similarities. You have the lines and such. Table 2 has a period after it here. The title is not italicized in this case. It looks like we have the numbers and then also the fraction that shows how the numbers were determined. And so the whole purpose of a table is to be as descriptive as possible. And so this is, like I said, just an example from one of my own research projects. Then I want to talk to you about formatting figures in APA style. So we've been formatting tables, but figures are everything else. Those are things like drawings and charts and pictures and graphs and anything that you can imagine that's not a table, we'll call that a figure. All right, so here are some tips for formatting a figure in APA style. Well, first of all, you'll find it interesting that the word figure and the description are actually under the graph. And usually it's not just the title, but a description of the figure is included as well, although not always. The title needs to be short and informative. We need to be careful with having long titles, as we tend to do in academia. And then, like I said, there's a description afterwards. The word figure and the numbers should be italicized. And whenever you have a graph such as this, all the relevant labels, axes, or legends need to be provided so that it's very easy for someone to look at a figure in a glance and know exactly what they're looking at, right? So that is just a very quick explanation of how to format a figure in APA style. And again, there is a resource here for you to follow up with. And here is an example from a book chapter that I wrote a few years ago with 2 co-authors. And this is just sort of our conception of what happens in something called the time bubble. And so you'll see that this is somewhat similar to the last example that I gave you. There was a figure, although the word figure is not italicized. Again, this is the book publisher's preference to format it any way that they want. The title is Time Bubble, and then there's a very brief description of what it is. So that is it in a nutshell. I hope that this is helpful for you as you make your frequency tables, your histograms, but also that you are able to format them using APA formatting. And like I said, your editors and publishers may change that formatting, but it is the expected practice to at least submit in APA formatting. All right, good luck, and bring any questions you have to the hallway conversations. That concludes our videos for this week. There have been a lot this week, and I understand that. Hopefully they have given you a good foundation for taking your tutorial quizzes and completing your assignments. Good luck.